seen this yet," Harry said, looking around at the door to the girls' dormitories. "Let's go and tell her," said Ron. He bounded forward, pulled open the door, and stepped off a spiral staircase. He was on the sixth time when it happened. There was a loud, wailing, klaxon-like sound, and the steps mattered together to make a long, smooth stone slide. There was a brief moment when Ron tried to keep in line, arms walking madly like windmills that he told over backward and shot down the newly created slide, coming to rest on his back at Harry's feet. I don't think we're alone in the girls' dormitory," said Harry, pulling round to his feet and trying not to laugh. To fourth, "Your girls came zooming gleefully down the stone slide. Ooh, who tried to get upstairs?" They giggled happily, leaving to their feet and opening Harry and Ron. "Me," said Ron, who was still rather disheveled. "I didn't realize that would happen. It's not fair," he added to Harry, and the girls headed off for the boarding hall, still giggling madly. "Gary was alone in our dormitory. How come we're not alone?" "Well, it's an old-fashioned rule," said Harry, who had just slid neatly only around in front of them and was now gazing to her feet. "But it's sent in Hogwarts, a history that the fathers taught boys. We're less trustworthy than girls. Anyway, why were you trying to get in there?" "To see you. Look at this," said Ron, dragging her to the notice board. Hermione's eyes slid readily down the notice. Her expression became stony. "Someone must have blubbered to her," said Ron angrily. "They can't have yet," said Hermione in a low voice. "Your surname, Ned," said Ron. "You think just because you're honorable and trustworthy?" "No, they can't did because I put a Jenkins on the piece of parchment we on site," said Hermione grimly. "Believe me, if in wise run." "No, they can't have done because I put a jinx on this piece of parchment we all signed," said Hermione grimly. "Believe me, if in wise run or untold ambush will not exactly who said out and they will really regret it." "What happened to them?" said Rowling again. "Well, put it this way," said Hermione. "It made Eloise and Jackson look like a couple of cute freckles. Come on, let's go down to breakfast and see what the others think. I wonder what has been put up in all these houses." He was immediately apparent on Anakin the great hall that ambushes said had not only impeded in Gryffindor Tower. There was a peculiar instability about the chatter and the extra measure of movement in the hall as the people created up and down their tables conferring. Odds they had read. Harry, Ron, and Hermione had brightly taken their things when Neville did Fred George and Ginny descended upon them. "Did you see it? What are you going to do?" They were all looking at Harry. He glanced around to make sure the window teacher knew them. "We're going to the Inway, of course," he said quietly. "Knew you said that," said George, being and thumping Harry on the arm. "The prefects as well," said Fred, looking Weasley and Ron and Hermione. "Of course," said Hermione coolly. "Never mind. Spots the idiots come over here, not it look."
"Really suspicious, sit down," she mouthed to Ernie and Hannah, gesturing friendly to them to rejoin the half-pot table. "Later, we talk to you later. I'll tell Michael," said Ginny impatiently, swinging herself off her bench, the fool honestly. She hurried off toward the Ravenclaw table. Harry watched her go. Chu was sitting not far away, talking to the curly-haired friend she was brought along to the Hog's Head. Would Ambroge's notice scare her of meeting them again? But the full repercussions of the same were not felt until Hess were leaving the great hall for history of magic. Harry, Ron, it was Angelina, and she was hurrying toward them, looking perfectly desperate. "It is okay?" said Harry quietly. When she was near enough to hear him, we're still going to. You realize she's including witches in this, said Angelina over him. We have to go and ask permission to reform the Gryffindor team. What? Said Harry. No way, said Ron, appalled. I read the sign. It mentions team too. So listen, Harry, I am saying this for the last time. Please don't lose your temper with Ambridge again or she might not let I play anymore. Okay, said Gary, for Angelina looked as though she was on the verge of tears. Don't worry, I'll behave myself. But Ambridge is in history of magic that Ron grimly as they that of forbidden this lesson. She hasn't expected business yet. But you and she's there. But he was wrong. The only teacher present when they entered it was Professor Bing, following an inch or so above his chair as usual, and preparing to continue this monotonous drone on Jason Worth. Did not even attempt to follow what he was saying today. He doodled idly not on his parchment, ignoring Hermione's frequently glares and nudges. Until a particularly painful poke in the ribs made him look up angrily. What? She pointed at the window. Harry looked around. Hedwig watched perched on the narrow window ledge, gazing through the thick glass at him. A later time to her leg. Harry could not understand if they had just had breakfast. Why earth hadn't she delivered the later than and as usual? Many of his classmates were pointing out Hedwig to each other too. Oh, I always loved the owl. She's so beautiful. Harry let Lavender they part water. He glanced around at Professor Binks to continued to read his notes severely, and whereas the class's attention was even less focused upon him than usual, Harry slipped quietly for his chair, crouched down, and hurried along the road to the window where slid the catch, and opened it very slowly. He had expected Hedwig to hold out her leg so that he could remove the ladder and then fly off to the owlery. But the moment the window of the opened wide enough, she hopped inside, hooting dolefully. He closed the window with anxious glance of Professor Bean, crouched low again, and spun back to his seat with Hedwig on his shoulder. He regained his seat, transferred Hedwig to his help, and made to remove the latter hand to her leg. It was only that he realized that Hedwig's feathers were only ruffled, some were bent the wrong way, and she was holding one of her wings at an odd angle. She's hurt, Harry whispered, beginning his head low overhead. Hermione and Ron leaned in closer. Hermione even put down her quill. Look, there's something wrong with her wing. Hedwig was quivering when Harry made to touch the wing sheet.
Professor Beans, said Harry loudly, and everyone in the class turned to look at him. I'm not feeling well. Professor Beans raised his eyes from his notes, looking amazed, as always, to find the room in front of him full of people. Not feeling well? He repeated hazily. Not at all well, said Harry firmly, getting to his feet, while concealing Hedwig behind his back. So I think I'll need to go to the hospital wing. Yes, said Professor Beans, clearly very much wrong-footed. Yes, yes, hospital wing. Oh, well, off you go, then, Perkins. Once outside the room, Harry returned Hedwig to his shoulder and hurried off up the corridor, pausing to think only when he was out of sight of Bing's door. His first choice of somebody to cure Hedwig would have been Hedrick, of course, but as he had no idea where Hagrid was, his only remaining option was to find Professor Grabbly Plank and hope she would help. He peered out of a window at the blustery Overcast grounds. There was no thing of her anywhere near Hagrid's cabin. If she was not teaching, she was probably in the staff room. He set off downstairs, Hedwig hooting feebly as she stayed on his shoulder. Two stone gargoyles flanked the staff room door. As Harry approached, one of them croaked, "You shall be in class, Sonny Jim." "This is urgent," said Harry curtly. "Oh, urgent, is it?" said the other gargoyle in a high-pitched voice. "Well, that put us in our place, hasn't it?" Harry nodded. He heard footsteps, and then the door opened and he found himself face to face with Professor Mrs. McGonagall. "You haven't been given another detention," she said at once, his squirrel spectacles flashing alarmingly. "No, Professor," said Harry hastily. "Well, then, why are you out of class?" "It's urgent, apparently," said the second gargoyle snidely. "I'm looking for Professor Grabbly Plank," Harry explained. "It's my own injured owl, did you say?" Professor Grabbly Plank appeared off Professor Mrs. McGonagall's shoulders, smoking a pipe and holding a copy of the Daily Prophet. "Yes," said Harry, lifting Hedwig carefully off his shoulder. "She turned up after the other post owls and her wings all funny. Look." Professor Grabbly Plank stuck her pipe firmly between her teeth and took Hedwig from Harry while Professor Mrs. McGonagall watched. Said Professor Grabbly Plank, her pipe waggling slightly as she talked. "Looks like something attached her. Can't think what would have done it. Throw. Theatrals. Will something go to birds? Of course, but Hedricks go the Hogwarts. Theatral well trained not to touch owls." Harry neither knew nor cared what theatral were. He just wanted to know that Hedwig was going to be all right. Professor Mrs. McGonagall, however, looked sharply at Harry and said, "Do you know how far these owls travelled, Potter?" Said Harry. "From London, I think." He met her eyes briefly and knew that she understood. London to mean number 12, Gramley Place. By the way, her eyebrows had joined in the middle. Professor Grably Plank pulled a monocle out of the inside of her robes and squared it into her eyes to examine Hedwig's wings closely. "I should be able to sort this out if you leave her with me, Potter," she said. "She shouldn't be flying long distance for a few days in any case." Right, thanks," said Harry, just as the bell rang off break. "No problem," said Professor Grably-Plank gravely, turning back into the staff room.
"Just a moment, Wilhelmina," said Professor McGonagall. "Potter's later." "Oh, yeah," said Harry, who had momentarily forgotten the scroll tied to Hedwig's leg. Professor Grubbly-Plank handed it over and then disappeared into the staff room, carrying Hedwig, who was staring at Harry as though unable to believe he would give her ever like this. Feeling slightly guilty, he turned to go, but Professor McGonagall called him back. "Potter!" "Yes, Professor?" She glanced out and down the corridor. There were students coming from both directions. "Bear in mind," she said quickly and quietly, her eyes on the scroll in his hand, "that channels of communication in head out of Hogwarts may be being watched, won't you?" "I," said Harry, but the flood of students rolling along the corridors was almost upon him. Professor McGonagall gave him a curt nod and retreated into the staff room, leaving Harry to be swept out into the courtyard with the crowd. Here he spotted Ron and Hermione already standing in a sheltered corner, their ear-cloth collars turned up against the wind. Harry slid open the scroll as he hurried toward them and found 5 words in the Sirius's handwriting. "Today, same time, same place." "Is Hedwig okay?" asked Hermione anxiously the moment his was within earshot. "Where did you take her?" asked Ron. "To Grabby-Plank," said Harry, "and I mean McGonagall. Listen." And he told them what Professor McGonagall had said. To his surprises, neither of the others looked shocked. On the contrary, they exchanged significant looks. "What?" said Harry, looking from Ron to Hermione and back again. "Well, I was just saying to Ron, what if someone had tried to intercept Hedwig? I mean, she's never been hurt on a flight before, has she?" "Who's the letter from anyway?" asked Ron, taking the note from Harry. "Snuffles," said Harry quietly. "Same time, same place." "Does he mean the fire in the common room?" "Obviously," said Hermione, also reading the note. not. She looked uneasy. I just hope nobody else has read this. But it was still sealed and everything, said Harry, trying to convince himself as much as her. And nobody would understand what it meant if they didn't know wherein spoken to him before, would they? I don't know, said Hermione anxiously, hitching her back over her shoulder as the rang again. It wouldn't be exactly difficult to reseal the scroll by magic. And if any was watching the Flu Network, but I don't really see how we can warn him not to come without that being interested too. They trudged down the stone steps to the dangerous four potions, all three of them lost in thought. But as they reached the bottom of the stairs, they were recalled to themselves by the voice of Draco Malfoy, who was standing just outside Snape's classroom door, waving around an official-looking piece of parchment and talking much louder than was necessary so that they could hear every word. Yeah, Ambridge gave the Slytherin Quidditch team permission to continue playing straightway. I went to ask her worst thing this morning, Ink. Well, it was pretty much automatic. I mean, she know my father.
Educational decree number 24. Real well, he's always popping in and out of the ministry. It'd be interesting to see whether Gryffindor are allowed to keep playing on it. Don't rise, Hermione whispered, imploring to Harry and Ron, who were both watching Malfoy, faces set and fists clenched. It's what he wants. I mean, said Malfoy, raising his voice a little more, his grey eyes glittering malevolently in Harry and Ron's direction. If it's a question of influence with the ministry, I don't think they've got much chance. From what my father says, they've been looking for excuse to sack Arthur Weasley for years, and as for Potter, my father says it's a matter of time before a ministry has him carted off St. Mungo's. Apparently they've got a special ward of people whose brains have been addled by magic. Malfoy made a grotesque face, his mouth sagging open and his eyes rolling. Grab and Goyle gave the usual grunts of laughter. Pansy Parkinson shrieked with glee. Something collided hard with Harry's shoulders, knocking him sideways. A split second later, he realized that Neville had John's charger past him, heading straight for Malfoy. Neville, no! Harry leapt forward and seized the back of Neville's robes. Neville struggled financially, his fist flying, trying desperately to get at Malfoy, who looked for a moment extremely shocked. "Help me!" Harry flung at Ron, managing to get an arm around Neville's neck and guiding him backward, away from the Slytherin. Crabbe and Goyle were now flexing their arm, closing in front of Malfoy, ready for the fight. Ron hurried forward and seized Neville's arms, Together, he and Harry's success in guarding Neville back into the Gryffindor line. Neville's face was scarlet. The pressure Harry was exerting on his throat rendered him quite incomprehensible, but words spluttered from his mouth. Chapter 17. Not funny, don't mangoes show him. The danger door opened. Snape appeared there. His black eyes swept up the Gryffindor line to the point where Harry and Ron were wrestling with Neville. Fighting Potter, Weasley, Longbottom. Snape said in his cold, sneering voice. 10 points from Gryffindor. Lilies, Longbottom. Potter, or it will be detention inside all of you. Harry let go on Neville, who stood panting and growling at him. I had to stop you, Harry gasped, picking up his bag. Grab and Goyle would have torn you apart. Neville said nothing. He merely snatched up his own bag and stalked off into the dungeon. What is the name of Merlin? Said Ron slowly, as they followed Neville. What's that about? Harry did not answer. He knew exactly who the subject of people who were inside mangoes because of magical damage to their brains was highly distressing to Neville. But he had sworn to Dumbledore that he would not tell out Neville's secret. Even Neville did know that Harry knew. Harry, Ron, and Hermione took their usual seat at the back of the class and pulled off Parchment quills and their copies of the 1000 Magical Herb and Fungi. The class around them was whispering about what Neville had just done. But when Snape closed the dungeon door with an echoing bang, everybody held silent immediately. You will know, said Snape in his low, sneering voice, that we have a guest with us today. He gestured toward the dim corner of the dungeon. And Harry saw Professor Umbridge sitting there, clipboard on her knee. He glanced sideways at Ron and Hermione, his eyebrows raised. Snape and Umbridge, the two teachers he hated most. It was hard to decide which he wanted to triumph over the other.
Good afternoon, class. Good afternoon, Professor Umbridge. They chanted drily. Once away, please. But there was no answering flurry of women this time. Nobody had dared to take out their wands. Please turn to page 34 of Defensive Magical Theory and read the third chapter, entitled The Case for Non-Offensive Responses to Magical Attack. There will be no need to talk. Harry, Ron, and Hermione sat together under the breath. No Quidditch practice, said Angelina in hollow tones when Harry, Ron, and Hermione entered the common room that night after dinner. But I kept my temper, said Harry, horrified. I didn't send anything to her, Angelina. I swear I know, said Angelina miserably. She just said she needed a bit of time to consider. Consider what? Said Ron angrily. She's given the Slytherins permission, why not us? But Harry could imagine how much Umbridge was enjoying holding the threat of no Greenford Quidditch team over their heads and could easily understand why she would not want to relinquish that weapon over them too soon. Well, said Hermione, look on the bright side. At least now you have time to do Snape's essay. That's a bright side, is it? Snapped Harry while Ron stared incredulously at Hermione. No Quidditch practice and extra potions? Harry slumped down into a chair, grabbed his potions essay reluctantly from his bag, and set to work. It was very hard to concentrate, even though he knew that Sirius was not due in the fire until much later. He could not help glancing into the flames every few minutes. There was also an incredible amount of noise in the room. Fred and George appeared finally to have perfected one type of squealing snack box, which they were taking turns to demonstrate to a cheering and whooping crowd. First, Fred would take a bout out of the orange and all a chew, at which he would vomit spectacularly into a bucket. Then he would force down the purple and off the chew, at which the vomiting had immediately ceased. Lee George, who was assisting the demonstration, was lazily vanishing the vomit at regular intervals, the same vanishing spell Snape kept using on Harry's potions. What the regular sounds of retching, cheering, and Fred and George taking advance orders from the crowd. Harry was finding it especially difficult to focus on the correct method for strengthening solutions. Hermione was not helping matters. The cheers and sound of vomit hitting the bottom of Fred and George's bucket were punctuated by loud and disapproving sniffs that Harry found, if anything, more distracting. Just go and stop them then, he said irritably. I can they're not technically doing anything wrong, said Hermione through gritted teeth. They're quite within their rights to eat the foul things themselves, and I can't find a rule that says the other idiots aren't entitled to buy them, not unless they proven to be dangerous in some way, and it doesn't look as though they are. Say, Harry and Ron watched George projectile vomit into the bucket, held down the rest of the chew, and straightened up, beaming with arms wide to protracted applause. You know I don't had white, Fred and George only got 3 OVL each, said Harry, watching as Fred, George and Lee collected gold from the eager crowd. They really know their stuff.
Oh, they only know flashy stuff that's of no real use to anyone, said Hermione disapprovingly. No real use? Said Ron in an sterent voice. Hermione, they've made about 26 gallons already. It was a long while before the crowd around the Weasley twins disappeared. Then Fred, Lee, and George stood up, counting their takings even longer, so it was well past midnight when Harry, Ron, and Hermione finally had the common room to themselves. At long last, Fred had closed the doorway to the boys' dormitories behind him, retailing his box of gallons ostensibly so that Hermione scowled. Harry, who was making very little progress with his patience easy, decided to give it up for the night. As he put his books away, Ron, who was dozing lightly in an armchair, gave a muffled grunt, awoke, and looked blearily into the fire. "Sirius," he said. Harry whipped round. Sirius' untidy dark head was sitting in the fire again. "Hi," he said, grinning. "Hi," chorused Cherry, Ron, and Hermione, all three kneeling down on the hearthrug. Crookshanks poured loudly and approached the fire, trying, despite the head, to put his face close to Sirius. "How are things?" said Sirius. "Not that good," said Harry, as Hermione pulled Crookshanks back to stop him singing with Shakespeare. The ministries forced through another decree, which means we're not allowed to have teams or secret defense against the dark arts groups, said Sirius. There was a short pause. "How did you know about that?" Harry demanded. "You want to choose your meeting place more carefully," said Sirius, grinning still more broadly. "The Hawk's Head, I ask you." "Well, it was better than the three broomsticks," said Hermione defensively. "That's always packed with people, which means you'd have been harder to our here," said Sirius. "You've got a lot to learn, Hermione." "Who overheard us?" Harry demanded. "Montagues, of course," said Sirius, and when they all looked puzzled, he lost. He was the witch under the veil. That was Montague's hair said, stunned. What was he doing in the Hawk's Head? What do you think he was doing? Said Sirius impotently. "Keeping an eye on you, of course." "I'm still being followed," asked Harry angrily. "Yeah, you are," said Sirius, "and just as well. Isn't it, if the first thing you are going to do on your weekend off is organize an illegal defense group?" But he looked neither angry nor worried. On the contrary, he was looking at Harry with distant pride. "Why was Dan hidden from us?" asked Ron, sounding disappointed. "We'd liked to we seen him." "He was banned from the Hawk's Head 20 years ago," said Sirius, "and then Barman's got a long memory. We lost Muddy's spear, invisibility cloak when Strakis was arrested, so Dan's been dressing as a witch a lot lately. Anyway, first of all, Ron, I've sworn to pass on a message from your mother." "Oh, yeah," said Ron. "She say on no account whatsoever are you to take part in an illegal secret defense against the dark arts group. She says you'll be expelled for sure and your future will be ruined. She says that will be plenty of time to learn how to defend yourself later and that you are too young to be worrying about that right now. She also advises Harry and Hermione not to proceed with the group, though she accepts that she has no authority."
Education Decree number 24. Over either of them and simply begs them to remember that she has their best interest at heart. She would have write all this to you. But if the owl had been interested, you'd all have been in right trouble, and she can't say it for herself because she's on duty tonight. "On duty doing what?" said Ron quickly. "Never you mind. Just stuff for order," said Sirius, "so it's fallen to me. Be the messenger and make sure you tell her I'll pass it all on, because I don't think she trusts me too." There was another pause in which Crookshanks, mewing, untapped to paw Sirius' hand, and Ron filled the hole in the hearthrug. "So you want me to say I'm not going to take part in the defense group?" he muttered finally. "Me? Certainly not," said Sirius, looking surprised. "I think it's an excellent idea." You do? Said Gary, his heart lifting. Of course I do, said Sirius. Do you think for father I would wait and take an order from an old hag like Ambridge? But last term all you did was tell me careful and not take risks. Last all the evidence was that something inside. Hogwarts was trying to kill you, Gary, said Sirius impatiently. This year were not the something outside. Hogwarts would like kill us you. So I think learning to defend yourself properly is very good idea. And if we do get expert, Garmona said, a quizzel look on her face. Garmoni, the whole thing was your idea, said Gary staring at her. I know it was. I just wonder what Sirius thought, she said, grinning. Well, better expert and able to defend yourself than thinking safely in school without click, said Sirius. Here, said Gary and Ron enthusiastically. So, said Sirius, how are you organizing this group? Where are you meeting? Well, that's a bit of a problem now, said Gary. Don't know where we're going to be able to go. How about the Shrieking Shack? Suggested Sirius. Hey, that's an idea, said Ron excitedly. But Hermione made a skeptical noise, and all the three of them looked at her. Sirius had training in the flames. Well, Sirius, it's just the we're only for you meeting in the Shrieking Shack when you were at school, said Hermione, and although you could transform into animal, and you suppose you could all have squids and cyclic invisibility cloak if you wanted to, but there are 28 of and now of the animals, so we need so much invisibility cloak in the invisibility market. Fair point, said Sirius, looking slightly disclack. Well, I am sure you can with somewhat. There used to be a pretty roomy secret passage behind the big mirror of the first floor. You might have enough space to practice jigsaw. Frank and George told me it's blocked, said Gary, shaking his head cavity in or something. Oh, said Sirius, frowning. Well, I have a thing and get back to. He broke off. His face was suddenly trained. Alarmed, he drank sideway, expertly looking into the solid brick wall of the fireplace. Sirius, said Gary angrily, but he had vanished. Gary gaped at Flamus for a moment, then turned to look at Ron and Hermione. Why did Hermione gave a horrified gasp and leapt to her feet, still staring at the fire. Hand had appeared among the flames, groping as though to catch hold of something. A stubby, short-fingered head covered in ugly, old-fashioned rings. The three of them ran for it. At the door of the boys' dormitory, Harry looked back. Umbridge's hand was still making snatchy moves among flames, as she knew exactly where Sirius had been moments before and was determined to see